Hello and welcome. My name is Christina from Empowered Creator. I am a mindset and conscious manifesting teacher and coach, and this is my YouTube channel. Here I talk about all things law of assumption, mindset, conscious manifesting, the quantum universe, and a lot more. And my goal is to simplify everything without the fluff. So if you guys like this content and you would like to see more of it, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, like it, share it, and stick around. Also, if you need help with your specific situation, I offer one-on-one coaching, email coaching, small group coaching, as well as custom subliminals for whatever needs you may have. Also, I've just recently launched my first mini course. So if you're interested in any of these services, the links are below in the description box. Click on them and they're going to take you to my website. With all that being said, let's dive into today's video. In today's video, we're going to talk about the concept of everyone is you pushed out, and specifically how it was taught by Neville Goddard and how Neville explained it in his teachings and in his books. And I'm going to give you all some examples, some stories that Neville himself has included in several of his books, to illustrate better and to help you understand better what this whole everyone is you pushed out concept is about. So this is what I'll be discussing in today's video. Stay tuned. So Neville famously said, "The whole wide world is yourself pushed out." What he meant by that was how our dominant assumptions, our dominant beliefs about any situation or about a person, about a relationship, about ourselves, also our overall mental and emotional state, our overall mood, feelings, thoughts, energy overall is getting pushed out, and the world, like the mirror that it is, mirrors it back to us, reflects it back to us. What this also means is that people around us show up according to our perceptions of them, according to our perspectives of ourselves, of life in general, the world in general, people in general, but also those specific individuals. And so people are actually going to show up in our lives and treat us the exact way we expect to be treated by them. They're going to show up as the version of themselves, because remember, we all have infinite versions within us of ourselves. So they're going to show up as the versions of themselves that we expect them to show up as. They are going to show up as the versions of themselves that we perceive them to be. They are going to show up as the versions of themselves that we assume them to be, that we feel them to be, that we think them to be. If our energy towards them is very hostile, very defensive, very frustrated, then they are going to show up and give us reasons and evidence, quote unquote, that this is who they truly are. This is the version of themselves that they're going to show to us. On the other hand, if we feel lovingly towards them, if we see them in a good light, if we expect good things and good treatment from them, and I don't mean fooling ourselves, I mean genuinely, deep down, expecting good treatment from them, they're going to match that, you guys. They're going to show us the version of themselves that treats us well, the version of themselves that is loving, that is accepting, that is appreciative. And this is why sometimes we hear about the same person being perceived in different ways by different people. You might hear one person saying, "They're horrible to me, they're treating me horribly," and then one other person saying, "No, they're wonderful. What are you talking about?" You know why this is happening? And it's the same person, you guys, it's the same person. You know why this is happening? This is happening because person A has an assumption of that person as being horrible, treating them badly, being mean, whatever it might be. Whereas the second person, person B, has a very different perception of that person, of someone who treats them nice, who is a nice person, who is polite, who is kind, who is loving, who is accepting, etc., etc. And so this same person, who has an infinite number of versions within themselves, is showing a mean version to person A, whereas they're showing a wonderful, nice, loving version to person B. And it's the same person. So let that sink in for a moment and understand and realize that all of us have infinite versions of ourselves within ourselves, and that we're all mirrors of each other, reflecting each other's assumptions, perceptions, expectations, feelings, thoughts, energies, and so on. So Neville illustrates that very, very well and very, very aptly throughout his books. But today I have chosen 4 stories where he's talking specifically about that concept of everyone is you pushed out in his books to illustrate this point, to illustrate that our perceptions of other people are going to be reflected back to us by them, and that they're going to match that version of themselves that we have dominant within us. And I think those stories illustrate that concept and illustrate that point very, very well. The first story is about a woman who had been estranged from her father for, I believe, something like 18 years. Her desire was for her father to reapproach her, for her to reconcile with her dad, and for them to have a normal relationship again, which they hadn't had in almost 2 decades. So she took Neville's advice, she took Neville's teachings, and did her imaginal acts for several days or a few weeks in a row, and she started changing her perception of her dad from someone who was far away, someone who was indifferent, someone who wasn't interested in her, to someone who was loving, caring, someone who wanted a relationship with her. And within a couple of weeks, her dad, who had been estranged from her for 18 years, you guys, 18 years, came knocking on her door and wanted to reconcile and wanting a relationship now, a normal relationship with his daughter. Now, this story also had a funny twist because that woman also had wanted a fur coat, and I guess her dad brought her the fur coat as a present, so that was kind of like a double bonus. But the story, the main story, is how she was able to reconcile with her dad after almost 2 decades of them being estranged, just by changing her perception of him and just by changing how she viewed them and how she viewed their relationship. The second story was about another woman who was a grandmother and who had a fight with her daughter-in-law, and for about 2 years or 2.5 years, she hadn't seen her grandchildren because her daughter-in-law, in her opinion, was preventing her from seeing the grandchildren because of the fight that they had had. So she consulted with Neville. Neville told her about this whole concept of everyone is you pushed out. What you want is not manifesting. You're not having the experience that you want in your 3D because you have kept yourself stuck in that idea that your daughter-in-law is preventing you from seeing your grandkids. And so he advised her to work on changing that. So what that woman did was that she wrote a letter as if the letter came from her daughter-in-law, and basically in the letter they were reconciling. They were apologizing to each other. The daughter-in-law was saying that I want you to have a relationship with your grandchildren, so let's have a fresh start, and basically let's repair our relationship and let's have you back into our lives again and into the grandchildren's lives. Well, she wrote that letter, she would read it over and over to herself for several days, and then after about a week or two, she got a letter in the mail from her daughter-in-law that first of all was along those same lines that she had imagined, that she wanted a reconciliation, she wanted them to have a relationship again, and second, she was inviting them to come see the grandchildren. So by that woman changing her perception of her daughter-in-law, of the relationship between them, the relationship with her son's family, she was able to bring about the reconciliation. She was able to bring about the different reality where she was now back into the grandchildren's life. She was now accepted again by her daughter-in-law, her son's family, and where they were back to being a happy family again. The third example, and I believe I might have mentioned that in an older video, was another one of Neville's clients, also a woman, who was working for a theater production company. I believe she was the costume designer. And she had a big, huge problem with the producer, who was her boss. She felt like he never appreciated her, that he didn't like her work, that he was always disparaging, that he was always offending her and making bad comments about her work. And all in all, she was describing a very toxic work environment to Neville when she came in to see him, which he said, and he invited her to watch her inner conversations with her boss in her mind, what kind of inner conversations she was having with him in her mind. She took Neville's advice, she started being aware of her inner conversations and her inner dialogues. Lo and behold, she found out that she had been having fights with him in her head on a daily basis. So then she took Neville's advice and she started having different types of inner conversations, loving inner conversations where her boss was showing her appreciation for her work, for who she was as a person, for what she was contributing to the company. And within a few days, she went back to Neville and reported to him that within a day or two of her changing her inner conversations, her boss started showing a completely different version of himself. A version where he was being nice to her, polite to her, appreciative of her work. He was giving her compliments about her work. And overall, the relationship became so much smoother, so much nicer. And it became exactly how she wanted it to be as soon as she changed her inner conversations, as soon as she changed her perceptions of her boss and their relationship. So this last story is about a woman who was a teacher in a high school, and she was dealing with a highly disruptive female student. Apparently, that student was causing a lot of trouble in the classroom. She was very disruptive to her classmates. She was extremely rude to teachers. She was very, very unpleasant to everyone. She wasn't taking direction. She was completely undisciplined. And all the teachers of that high school, at some point, they had to convene and they had to decide to kick her out of the school because they could no longer deal with her. She was impossible to deal with. She was impossible to manage. So that teacher, knowing the law and knowing the concept of everyone is you pushed out, she decided to take on an experiment. The experiment was that for one whole evening and one whole night, she started imagining the student as a completely different version, as someone who was pleasant, someone who was nice, someone who was polite, someone who was cooperating with her classmates and her teachers, someone who was taking direction, someone who was willing to be taught. And she decided to stay and dwell in that concept of the girl and not deviate from that. So what happened was the next morning, she went to school. The girl came to school. Remember, she was about to be expelled because she had displayed disruptive behavior for a long, long time. She came into the classroom, said good morning to the teacher, good morning to everyone with a huge smile on her face. Super nice, super happy, super cooperative, super calm, a different person. Now the teacher was telling Neville that she couldn't believe it. She kept thinking to herself, have I done this? Have I done this with my imagination, just with changing my perception of her like that? She's now a different version of herself. And she admitted, she confessed to actually expecting her to go back to her old bad self. Well, she never did. She stayed that nice, cooperative, polite, new version of herself, and she no longer had to be expelled from the school. So you see, guys, all these examples, all these stories coming from Neville, and I'm pretty sure if you reverse engineer in your life, you are going to come up with a ton of stories from your own life where the concept of everyone is you pushed out is on display and is being revealed to you and is being proven to you. But all these stories show you that one same point. Change your perceptions about someone or a situation or a relationship or even your own self, and the 3D world, including other people, are going to show you a different version of themselves. In some cases, even a radically different version. So I hope this has helped clarify some things for you, explain the concept a little better, motivate you to start taking it into serious account in your life. Start reverse engineering your life and seeing where other people in your life are actually reflecting your own concept, your own self-concept, or your concept of them, and start making this a lifestyle. And you guys, you are going to see huge differences. Don't be surprised. With all that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I intend that this has helped. As always, I very much appreciate you guys being on this channel, watching this content. I love making this content for you. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all at the next video. Until then, take care and bye-bye.